Blind Man's Bluff, Chapter 2. Written by Lady Redems on DeviantArt. Performed by Hideki Seiyu. Nick strode back out of the convenience store with a pack of cigarettes between his fingers, in the act of popping it open and pulling one out. He forced out a sigh as the stick settled between his lips, dangling out one corner of his mouth with a comforting sour taste. He'd left money on the counter. Sure, with the store oddly empty, he'd completely considered just taking the pack and running. But the security camera on the wall behind it had a tiny red light constantly blinking that reminded him he really couldn't afford getting caught robbing a store. So, he left a few bucks by the register. No harm done, really. Stepping around the corpse that still lay in an ever-growing puddle of dark blood on the asphalt, Nick walked over to get into his Barchetta's front seat. He sat a bit askew, legs spread, side relaxed against the arm of his seat. Pinching his fingertips over the cigarette, he keyed the car and then used the car lighter to light the cigarette, closing eyes as he gave a muffled inhale and his car purred to a steady idle. He practically felt the nicotine creeping into his bloodstream, heart picking up just a little, a faint buzz entering his body that let him relax a little more. Just a few weeks ago he had been further west, trailing from casino to casino. It was a lazy business, really, though a more lucrative one, considering the absolute morons who lined up at the poker and blackjack tables. Georgia had been his next stop, then down Florida. He even had a condo in Florida. Just thinking about it gave him a little sigh, one laced with smoke as his lips pulled into a small O. He should have gone there first, passed up goddamn Savannah, Georgia. Shaking his head quickly to disperse the self-chiding, the gambler let his lazed posture in his seat straighten up a bit, catching his cigarette between the knuckles on his left hand and then punching the radio on with his middle finger. He hadn't changed the channel. It'd likely be that same uppity woman he'd heard earlier, blabbering on empathetically in a manner that told him clearly she was a blonde. Of course, I'd probably still do her. Both his small, self-satisfied smirk and his train of thought broke off abruptly, staring just a little at the radio with a set expression of half annoyance. Silence? Testingly, he nibbled his cigarette back between his lips, freeing his hand to turn the volume dial a little. Nothing. More. Still nothing. A little more. He hit the end, a small click announcing the dial's refusal to go any further. Forcing a sigh through his nostrils that sent acrid smoke burning through them, Nick sat for a quiet moment, listening to the now audible, constant wall of static facing him. I must have gotten out of range, he reasoned, easily, although the silence set him on edge, enough that he forgot for an instant that he had it so loud. Damn Georgians, he grumbled quietly, deciding to blame the state for not having a station on that frequency, and then nonchalantly rolled his fingertip over to hit the scan button on the radio, rolling his lips slowly over the cigarette. Ensure all openings have been securely obstructed! The radio absolutely screamed it at him, even though the voice itself was monotone and calm, so loud he nearly lost his cigarette in his lap trying to jolt and turn it off. Secure the room with plastic He just managed to hit the off button, immediately going to rub at his ringing ears with the heel of his left hand. Jesus Christ, he complained in a groan, pawing the dial all the way down before he could make the same mistake again. What the hell even was that? He hadn't really registered most of the words with how loud they were. Ensure all openings have been securely obstructed? Some kind of public announcement? Moving to turn the radio back on after he felt his ears had been nursed enough, the gambler felt a little focus pinch between his brows, flicking the volume up just a few notches. If you think you are infected, remain calm. Quarantine yourself from the uninfected population immediately. His dark brows went up a little, startled, but before the voice could go on, he turned it back off. Oh, great. There is something going around. Damn it. He just reached over to pick his magnum back up from the passenger seat, straighten up his back when he noticed it. Over the purr of his car and the repeated echo of the radio going on in his head, he picked out a distinct sound coming from behind him. It was like the far-off din of a football stadium, incoherent shouts drawn out into roars. The gambler got his elbow braced on the back of his seat, pushing up on it so he could twist around and flicker his gaze over the pruned roadside tree line the noises seemed to be coming from. They grew louder. Fast. His pulse rose as he noticed he could hear the crashing of something breaking its way through tree limbs and shrubs. No. A lot of something. And then the horde broke through the tree line, scrambling in a screaming, blood-covered mass as they tripped over one another in their frantic fight to run at him. Their eyes bobbed in their loping, bright and blink yellow. "What the hell?" Nick panicked, although in that instance he forgave himself for it, nearly bending his finger back in a desperate jerk to get the shift out of park. He barely even managed it, finding his hands clumsy on the button. He turned too fast, hearing the tail end of his barchetta scrape the truck parked beside him, and it made the car wobble a bit before he could get it back under control. Green Eyes moved frantically between forward and the rear mirror, screeching out of the parking lot and making a dangerously skidding turn to get back onto the highway. There he floored it, the engine purring like a bathing cat now that it was on the road. The gambler stared intently at the rear-view mirror, knuckles going white on the steering wheel as he watched the crowd of what had to be 20 or 30 people, all covered in blood, leaves, and dirt, sprinting down the road after him. What he didn't watch was what hit him next. He actually didn't see it, not even a single glimpse. All he knew was something roared, this scream that sounded a little too human and a little too animalistic. And then his car was in the air, flipping to the side. Without a seatbelt, he felt his body start to lift, this surreal sensation. Then the car hit the tree line and everything went black, in a screaming chorus of bending metal and breaking glass.